Imagine signing the richest shoe deal in WNBA history, dropping two colorways that fans are hunting across an entire city, scoring 45 points days before All-Star Weekend, and then watching a record crowd of nearly 20,000 people pack an arena just to see you play in an exhibition game. Now imagine that happening to someone else while your signature shoe is sitting on a clearance rack with a discount sticker on it. That is not a hypothetical. That is exactly what went down during WNBA All-Star Weekend, and the gap between these two stories is wider than anything this league has ever seen before. One player walked into Chicago and took over everything: the court, the sneaker world, and the business headlines. The other picked that exact moment to post online and call herself the league's biggest crossover star. No evidence, no context, just the claim. So today on Clark's Spotlight, we are checking every single receipt, and what we find is going to surprise you. Before we get into it, drop in the comments right now: do you think Angel Reese actually believes she is bigger than Caitlin Clark, or is she just performing for the camera? Because by the end of this video, you are going to have a very strong opinion either way. Let's get into it. Subscribe and turn on all notifications so you never miss a Clark Spotlight video. 3 minutes? That is all it took. 3 minutes into the WNBA All-Star Game at the United Center in Chicago, and Caitlin Clark already had 11 points on the board. Not 11 points by halftime. Not 11 points in a slow build where she found her rhythm gradually. 11 points in the first 3 minutes of an exhibition game where most players treat the night like an extended warm-up session, and nobody seriously expects anyone to turn the competitive switch all the way on. But Clark did not get that memo, or she threw it away. She was pulling up from 33 feet, then 37 feet, dropping logo threes like she was alone in a gym with no defense and no pressure. Except there was a capacity crowd watching, and cameras broadcasting to an audience that had been locked in from tip-off. Logo threes in an empty gym feel impressive. Logo threes in an all-star setting, in front of nearly 20,000 people, with your peers watching from 3 feet away, feel like a statement. And Clark was making one, whether anyone was ready for it or not. What made it more interesting is the setting itself. All-star games across every major sport have a well-known reputation. Nobody goes hard. Nobody gambles on defense. Nobody risks embarrassing themselves or a teammate in a game that does not count. The format practically invites coasting, and most players accept that invitation without a second thought. The crowd comes for the spectacle and the personalities, not the competition. That is the unwritten agreement everyone shows up with. Clark apparently renegotiated that agreement by herself. The reaction from her own peers said everything. Wnba Wilson, one of the most decorated players in the entire league, a multiple-time MVP who has seen everything this sport has to offer, got caught so off guard by Clark's intensity that she accidentally blocked an Angel Reese layup while trying to get out of the way. Wilson laughed about it afterward, saying she never expected to be swatting shots in an all-star game. That is the kind of moment that does not get manufactured. You cannot script the league's best player getting dragged into competing because the energy in the building demanded it. By the final buzzer, Clark had taken over the night in a way that exhibition games almost never allow. The internet responded in real time, and the trends that followed were not vague, general WNBA content. They were specific, they were about one player, and they were everywhere at once. And that energy in the building did not come from nowhere. There was a reason 20,000 people showed up, and there was a reason resale tickets that were originally listed at $71 were selling for $343 on game day. One name was doing that. One player was tripling market value on a ticket for a game that did not count in the standings. That kind of pull does not come from marketing alone. It comes from something real that people feel and want to be around. But the performance was only the beginning of what Clark was building that weekend. Because while she was dropping logo threes, something was happening in the sneaker world at exactly the same time that would make the story even bigger. Here is something that gets overlooked in the Clark conversation, because the individual numbers are so loud they tend to drown everything else out. The teammates. The way her team played around her that weekend was not accidental, and it was not just a product of one superstar carrying everyone else on her back while they watched. Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell both talked after the game about trust. Not the vague kind of trust people mention in post-game interviews to sound like good teammates. Specific trust. The kind that gets built over a full season of practices, film sessions, bus rides, and tough losses. The kind you either have or you do not, and no amount of all-star weekend bonding activities is going to fast-track it into existence if the foundation was never laid. Lexi Hull and Sophie Cunningham matched Clark's physical energy from the opening possession. In a game where the easy choice is to coast and let the moment feel relaxed, both of them were pressing, competing, and bringing an edge that the other team simply was not matching. You watch the two sides of that court, and it becomes obvious within the first few minutes. One group of players was locked in. The other was going through the motions and waiting for the night to be over. That contrast matters beyond just basketball. It tells you something about the kind of culture Clark is part of versus what exists elsewhere. When a player competes that hard in a meaningless game, and her teammates not only follow but match the energy, that is a reflection of how that entire group operates. It does not appear overnight. It is built through consistency and through a player who does not turn the intensity dial up and down based on what is at stake on paper. What was happening on the other side of that court was almost the exact opposite picture. The energy was flat. The effort was inconsistent. Players were smiling through possessions in ways that read more like a photo opportunity than a basketball game. And none of that would matter if it stayed on the court, but it did not stay on the court. Because Clark's timeline after the game was full of her shouting out Lexi Hull, crediting Sophie Cunningham, talking about what Aaliyah Boston brought. She was pointing the camera at everyone around her. When you search her name after that weekend, the results include her teammates getting recognition from a player who did not have to give it. Now compare that to what was happening on a completely different social media feed at almost the exact same moment. While Clark was crediting her team, another player was online crediting herself. And the timing of that post, relative to everything Clark had just done, was a choice that did not land the way it was apparently intended. We will get into exactly what that post said and what it triggered across the internet. But first, there is something happening in the sneaker world during this same weekend that changes the entire financial picture of this story. Nike did not drop one shoe during All-Star Weekend. They dropped multiple Caitlin 1 colorways at the same time, in the same city, while Clark was on the floor making headlines, and the result was the kind of sneaker moment this league has never seen before. The headline colorway was the Gradient All-Star Edition, hot pink fading into university gold, a design that sneaker reviewers were not universally in love with from a technical standpoint, but could not stop talking about because the gradient execution was doing something the base silhouette alone could not. One reviewer put it plainly, the shoe is mid on its own, but the gradient colorways are saving it every single time, and the All-Star Weekend pair is nothing less than phenomenal for what that specific design choice accomplishes on that particular silhouette. A 97 out of 100, his words, for that colorway specifically. Then there was the white label, an all-white player exclusive that fans only found out existed because Clark teased it herself on her own channels. That is not a standard product launch. That is an artist dropping a surprise track at midnight and watching the internet combust. The exclusivity of a player exclusive turned a secondary colorway into the most talked-about pair of the weekend. Chicago giveaways had people running across the city hunting hidden pairs. This is not metaphorical. People were physically moving through Chicago chasing down shoes. Resellers had early pairs flipping before an official release date was even locked in. The demand for one colorway alone was tracking larger than what most complete sneaker lines generate across an entire product cycle. And here is what makes the Nike strategy genuinely impressive beyond just the weekend itself. This was not a single launch designed to spike and fade. Nike mapped the entire Caitlin 1 rollout from June through October, spacing colorways so the shoe stays in the cultural conversation for 5 straight months without a gap. Racer blue, purple, yellow zest, snow white. Each drop designed to create its own moment and its own news cycle. Racer blue is confirmed for an October 2025 drop at $140. Critics who thought one signature shoe was enough were watching Nike go significantly bigger than that. The purple colorway in particular has sneaker communities going. Reviewers who covered the yellow and blue version came back specifically to say the purple one is harder than anything they had seen from the line so far. The Triple C logo on the tongue, the color blocking, the USA color story running through it. These are details that sneaker culture notices, and sneaker culture was paying very close attention. The financial number underneath all of this is $28 million over 8 years. That is Clark's Nike deal, and it is the richest footwear contract any WNBA player has ever signed. Active or retired, nobody in league history is within range of that number. Nike did not offer that contract because they thought she might be popular. They offered it because they are betting on a decade of exactly what happened during All-Star Weekend, multiplied across 5 straight months of colorway drops and a global marketing push that has barely started. And the shoe business is only one piece of what Clark built, because the endorsement picture extends well beyond footwear, and the names attached to it are going to tell you everything about the gap between where she sits and where everyone else in this league currently stands. State Farm made Caitlin Clark their first ever female athlete endorser in company history. Read that again slowly. State Farm has been operating since 1922. Over 100 years of sponsoring athletes, building campaigns, and selecting faces for their brand. In all of that time, across every sport and every generation of female athletes, they never made that call for a woman until Clark walked through the door. That is not a small endorsement win. That is a landmark moment in sports marketing history. And it happened because the numbers Clark brings to every platform she touches are simply undeniable. Then there is Gatorade. The deal is reportedly $50 million, and it includes something that almost never happens in athlete endorsement agreements: her own flavor. Rainberry, written directly into the contract. Not a limited edition tie-in, not a co-branded label with her picture on the bottle. Her own flavor, designed around something she actually loved as a kid, built into the deal as a core piece of the partnership. At launch, Gatorade's own website crashed under the traffic volume. The flavor sold out almost immediately after it became available. A sports drink company with decades of experience managing major product launches was not prepared for what Clark's audience would do to their servers on day one. That combination, a website crash and an immediate sellout for a Gatorade flavor tied to a basketball player, is the kind of data point that brand managers save and present in boardrooms for years. It is proof of something that goes beyond being popular in sports. It is proof of a connection to a mainstream consumer audience that most athletes never build regardless of how successful they are on the court. Wilson giving Clark a signature basketball line completes the picture in a way that deserves its own spotlight. The last time Nike handed a signature basketball line to someone Wilson selected was Michael Jordan. Jordan, then Clark. Nobody in between for decades. That is the company Clark finds herself in from a brand architecture standpoint, and that context is almost impossible to overstate when you think about what it means for where this is all heading. Now flip the channel entirely. Angel Reese's Reebok signature shoe reportedly is not moving, not slowing down, not underperforming relative to expectations. Reportedly sitting in bargain bins, marked down with a discount sticker, and struggling to find buyers even at a reduced price. And according to reports, Reebok has pulled marketing support entirely, which means the shoe is essentially being left to disappear quietly from shelves without any additional investment behind it. A shoe with no marketing does not sell out. It does not create a moment, it just sits. Compare that to Sophie Cunningham, a fevered teammate of Clark's, whose new Adidas line was tracking to sell out in minutes based on early demand before the product even officially launched. One player connected to Clark's orbit generates instant sellout energy. One player on a different team with a different brand story cannot move product even at a markdown. Sponsors are not making these decisions randomly. They are reading the same data everyone else has access to, and that data is telling a very clear story about where consumer interest actually lives in this league right now. But while all of this was unfolding in real time across sneaker drops, record ticket prices, and endorsement announcements, something happened on social media that managed to cut through all of it for entirely different reasons. And the timing of it made everything worse. Right in the middle of all of it, the colorway drops, the record crowd, the Gatorade sellout, the all-star performance, Angel Reese posted online and declared herself the WNBA's it girl and the league's biggest crossover star. No announcement attached, no new deal to point to, no recent performance moment to build the claim around. Just the declaration, sitting there on the timeline at the exact moment when every algorithm in sports media was flooding with Caitlin Clark sneaker content, all-star highlights, and ticket price records. The post arrived into that specific environment and asked to be taken seriously as a counter-narrative. It did not land that way. The reaction was immediate, and it was not kind. Screenshots got pulled and quote-tweeted over and over. The same joke repeated itself across thousands of accounts within hours. Even commentators and analysts who typically stay completely neutral on the Clark versus Reese conversation were caught off guard enough by the timing to say something. People covering the business side of the sport pointed to that specific post as one of the clearest examples of why certain brands reportedly hesitate when Reese's name comes up in sponsorship conversations. Self-promotion without numbers to support it is exactly what corporate sponsors are trained to recognize and avoid. In the same post cycle, Clark's social media presence was doing something completely different. Teammates getting credit. Specific shoutouts to Lexi Hull, Sophie Cunningham, Aaliyah Boston. Gratitude aimed outward instead of a spotlight pointed inward. The contrast between those two social media presences during the same weekend, covering the same event, was stark enough that fans brought it up without being prompted. Here is what makes the timing particularly difficult to defend. There is a well-documented pattern that predates this specific weekend. Subtweets. Comments about respect that land immediately after Clark does something visible. Posts that appear to be written as responses to someone else's moment without directly naming that person. Fans who follow both players closely have been cataloging this pattern for long enough that it is no longer a hot take. It is an observed trend that people reference with receipts. The All-Star post was not an isolated incident. It was the latest chapter in a pattern that the internet has been watching build. And because of that context, the reaction was louder and faster than it might have been if this were the first time something like this happened. Rumors online also suggest, and it is worth noting this is speculative territory, that some brands considering partnerships with Reese have brought up brand consistency as a concern in early conversations. Nothing confirmed, nothing on record. But the chatter is out there, and in a world where brand deals live and die on perceived image, even unverified chatter carries weight in certain rooms. The irony is that the post accomplished the opposite of its apparent goal. Instead of shifting attention toward Reese, it directed more attention toward the comparison, and the comparison has never favored Reese less than it does right now. The receipts that the post invited people to check are all pointing in one direction. And the Reebok situation, underneath all of this, makes the timing of the self-promotion post even harder to understand. Because the numbers that would need to exist to support that kind of claim are simply not there. The Reebok shoe story is not complicated, but it is brutal when you lay it next to what was happening with the Caitlyn one at the same time. Reports indicate that Reese's Reebok signature line is sitting in bargain bins, marked down, not moving at full price, not moving at a discount, and apparently not benefiting from any active marketing support because Reebok has reportedly stepped back from promoting the line entirely. When a brand stops putting money behind a product, that product does not recover. It fades. The timeline from launch to clearance rack on this particular shoe has been short enough that industry observers noticed it and started asking questions. Bargain bin placement is a very specific kind of signal in the sneaker business. It does not mean the shoe is bad necessarily. It means demand never materialized at a level that justified the shelf space at full price. It means the consumer who was supposed to want this product either did not know it existed or knew about it and decided to pass. For a signature shoe attached to a player who publicly claims to be the league's biggest crossover star, that outcome is difficult to explain away. Now put that next to Sophie Cunningham, a player who occupies a much smaller media footprint than Reese by almost any measurable standard. Less social media noise, less mainstream coverage, less of the self-declared crossover star energy. But her Adidas line was tracking to sell out in minutes based on early demand before the official drop even happened. The sneaker community was already engaged. The consumer interest was already there, organically, without Cunningham needing to announce herself as anything. That contrast tells a story that brand executives understand immediately. Loud self-promotion and actual market demand are two completely different things, and they do not always move in the same direction. Sometimes they move in opposite directions. The Cunningham versus Reese sneaker situation is a case study in exactly that dynamic. For Clark, the demand side of the equation is not even in question at this point. The Caitlyn one is tracking as the fastest-selling women's basketball shoe Nike has ever released. That is a specific, sourced claim that Nike's own sales data would support or deny, and nothing from Nike's side has suggested denial. The Chicago giveaway format, the resale market flipping early pairs above retail, the website traffic from the Gatorade launch, every data point in Clark's ecosystem points toward demand that exceeds the supply available for it. The broader business picture underneath the sneaker story is what ties everything together. Brands are not chasing controversy. They have risk management teams specifically designed to avoid it. They are chasing consistency, chasing connection to consumers, and chasing athletes whose public behavior reinforces the image the brand wants attached to its product. Clark built her image through competition, through crediting the people around her, and through letting the on-court production drive the narrative. The endorsement portfolio that resulted from that approach, Nike, State Farm, Gatorade, reflects the consistency of someone who has never needed to announce how big they are because the numbers do it continuously without any help. The path forward for Reese is not impossible, but the gap right now is wide enough and the pattern documented well enough that closing it will require something more than a social media post claiming the title. It will require the kind of receipts that Clark walked into All-Star Weekend already holding. So here is where everything lands when you pull back and look at the full picture from that one weekend. Nearly 20,000 people paid record prices to watch an exhibition game. 2 Caitlin 1 colorways generated sellout demand before most people knew they existed. A $50 million Gatorade deal crashed a website on launch day. State Farm broke a century-long precedent. Sophie Cunningham's Adidas line is selling out in minutes while Reese'S Reebok line sits marked down and unsupported. And in the middle of all of it, one player posted online to announce she was the bigger star. The receipts do not lie. They never do. And every single receipt from that weekend points in the same direction, toward a player who built something real through performance, through consistency, and through making the people around her look better instead of making herself look bigger. What is genuinely fascinating going forward is whether any of this changes the dynamic, or whether the pattern continues exactly as it has been running. Clark is not slowing down. The shoe rollout runs through October. The endorsement machine is still accelerating, and the on-court product that drives all of it has shown no signs of leveling off. The question worth sitting with is this: at what point does the gap become too wide to ignore even for the people who have been choosing to look the other way? Drop that answer in the comments below, because this conversation is far from finished. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because Clark's Spotlight is covering every move in this league as it happens. The next video on your screen is one you do not want to miss.